I have a question to my friends, and that is, how do we support the troops by keeping them in a war that's based on lies? How do we support the troops by keeping them in another war which keeps expanding and they're getting shot at from on all sides? How do we support the troops by festering a war on the Afghan border with Pakistan and put them in even more peril because they don't have the support? How do we support the troops? We support them by bringing them home. That's what we should be appropriating money for, not to keep them there. Beyond that, isn't it interesting? We've got another $80 billion here for war. But we don't have money to keep people in their homes because there's still 13 million Americans who are losing their homes. We don't have money for the 50 million Americans who don't have any health care. We don't have money to save jobs. We don't have money to save our steel mills and our auto plants. What we have is we have money for war. Support the troops indeed. America has to start taking care of things here at home. And we can't do it by continuing to support wars that are based on lies. The Democrats took control of the Congress based on opposition to the war. We should be opposing this war instead of deferring to the president. We have the constitutional obligation under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution to decide whether a war should continue or not. We should end it here. We shouldn't be continuing it. I yield back.
From gentleman from New York Reserve.
Question for, I believe, Congressman Paul.
Congressman Paul, this comes from Jay Majumdar from Roswell, Georgia, and he wants to know if you agree with Senator McCain's statement that the United States might need to have U.S. troops in Iraq for as long as even 100 years.
I don't even think they should have gone. So keeping them for 100 years, where's the money going to come from? You know, the country's in bankruptcy, and when I listen to this argument, I mean, I find it rather silly because they're arguing technicalities of a policy they both agree with. They agreed with going in, they agreed for staying how many years, and these are technicalities. We should be debating foreign policy, whether we should have interventionism or non-interventionism, whether we should be defending this country or whether we should be the policeman of the world, whether we should be, you know, running our empire or not, and how are we going to have guns and butter? You know, the 70s were horrible because we paid for the guns and butters of the 60s. Now we're doing the same thing, and nobody even seems to care. The dollar is crashing, and you're talking about these technicalities about who said what, when. I mean, in 1952, we Republicans were elected to stop the war in Korea. 1968, we were elected to stop the war in Vietnam. And tragically, we didn't stop it very fast. 30,000 more men died. So when I talk about these long-term stays, I think, how many men are you willing to let die for this? For something that has nothing to do with our national security. There were no Al-Qaeda there, had nothing to do with 9/11, and there was no threat to our national security. They never committed aggression. It's unconstitutional. It's an undeclared war. And we have these silly arguments going on about who said what when. I think it's time to debate foreign policy and why we don't follow the Constitution and only go to war with a declaration of war.
Governor Huckabee, the idea of a 100-year...
tried to in every military escapade, frankly, over the last 50 or 60 years, without exception. There's no better example probably than Vietnam, where you had the President of the United States and the top generals in the Pentagon out and out lying about the Gulf of Tonkin incident and got us into the war, about the casualties, about how the war was going. Anyone who has ever looked closely at the Vietnam War can see that the public and the media were manipulated substantially. We don't like to think of ourselves as a militant nation, but we are in fact an incredibly militant and militaristic nation. It's not a view of ourselves that we want to carry around, but the fact is we are. If the president and the military-industrial complex, the defense establishment, if they all have decided that suddenly there's a problem somewhere, we need to drop some bombs or even put land forces somewhere in some country, this is a ritual that we have been seeing. We've toppled governments, we've done coups d'etats, we've used intelligence services for covert purposes and done horrible things around the world, and we have put up with the most heinous human rights abusing countries. We have propped them up, we've even trained them how to commit human rights abuses. Today's demon was yesterday's friend, all in the name of either the Cold War or for commercial reasons. It's basically economic colonialism. No one uses the colonialism word, but instead of just taking over the countries, we have a better way. We just go in and have free markets. Whether we're trying to sell our products to their citizens or we're trying to mine their resources, we need to be in that country for some reason, and therefore we're going to talk about free markets, free trade. But what's really going on is we want our companies to get rich in your country.